World War II. This is going to be our longest, quote unquote, chapter lesson. So we really can't afford to lose any time. Plus, I think, like I kind of said yesterday, that we have this propensity to not necessarily enjoy, but be more interested in war when it comes to learning about history. Is that kind of like a general statement, right? Except for Riley. And even we have to check ourselves on the uh, not not temptation, I guess, but kind of like to be so interested in war, we get interested in things like the symbols of war, and even to the point of an evil symbol like the swastika, like that's something cool to mess around with. I hope I made it clear yesterday that uh, I hope I better not see it in here because it is, oh, it's just a symbol. No, what it symbolizes is pure evil. So we would like to, you like to know what it is. You have to be able to recognize what it is because those who don't remember the past are destined to repeat it. So you have to be exposed to it, but you've got to realize that it is not a joke at all. And I hope I made that clear. It's kind of like, evolution. You have to know what it is, right? You should know what it is. You should be educated enough to know the people that don't believe in the truth. So you know how to talk to them, respond to them, make sure that future people that you engage with don't buy into it. All right. So we're looking at ourselves on video. The big one, WW2, the greatest generation.
Hi, Julian.
Oh, we got Julia, Schmides, who else? McKenna, Drew.
Jamin Brown.
Jamin's not here today. He doesn't bowl, does he? Does Jamin bowl?
No.
But he just went
He's
bowling
like really
instead of
bad.
coming to school.
Really bad at bowling.
Really?
All right. So we've had enough of this guy. Or did we leave off at the beer hall push? You guys, we got through that? That was the other class. They've missed 2 classes this week for the assembly. So the beer hall pooch. How about this? We got all Hitler done, didn't we?
Yeah.
Oh, we're in Mussolini.
Yeah, we got to fast.
Okay. Mussolini, Il Duce. I think I mentioned, he's like, not mentor, but Hitler looked up to Mussolini. Hitler admired Mussolini for his strong arm tactics, his heavy-handed, historians call it ruling with an very good, an iron fist, that you do as he says. And listen, one of the things about history that I'll say probably 100 times throughout the year is that there are some people, there is a large percentage of any population that is okay with that because of that constant thing I keep reminding you of, the choice that people have to make as a group between liberty and security. And if you make people feel insecure, they will readily give up their liberty. And as one of our greatest founding fathers is quoted as saying, Benjamin Franklin says, those who will give up their liberty for a little more security deserve neither. That makes sense? Those who will give up liberty for a little more security deserve neither. El Duce leads the fascist movement. We told you what that was based on, the fasces, right? The bundle of sticks with the blade sticking out of it. Mussolini had the help of, he recruited, just like Hitler did. Well, Hitler patterned after Mussolini. So like I said at the beginning, we're kind of doing these chronologically out of order. But Mussolini had his black shirts. Hitler had his brown shirts, the stormtroopers. Mussolini had his black shirts, an army, almost like a personal army, a para, see if you understand what this word means, para-government. It's like a government entity, but really not. Para meaning alongside. That's how we get parallel. Para, like it's a government entity, but not really officially a government entity. The black shirts were a well-known group of people that would intimidate the opposition to the fascist party. So if you were against them, you'd have to go underground. You'd have to have secret meetings because you wouldn't want. The other thing they do besides intimidating is they develop a network of, and this was kind of talked about in the last 2 years, like a year ago. This was kind of a hot topic in America that some people were promoting. Hey, tell on your neighbors. You guys remember hearing about that? Hearing about that a year and a half ago? Like everybody was supposed to be locked away. And if you see your neighbors with 10 cars in the garage, like say that first Christmas of 2020, there were people promoting for you to rat out, snitch on your neighbors because they had the audacity to have a family get together in 2020. Why would people fear that? Because if you know history, you start developing these networks of telling on each other and putting people at risk for some political intimidation. That's extremely un-American. His goal was to restore Italy to the glory days of Rome. So, question: did Mussolini think he was a bad guy? I wonder if Mussolini, when he looked in the mirror, did he see himself as a bad guy? What do you think? Like he had no self-awareness that what he was doing was wrong and evil. Do you think Hitler did? Nobody knows the answer, right? I don't know the answer. Do you think Hitler knew that he was evil? Like, what mind frame could you be in to think that you would be ordering the execution of all these people, but yet you're doing it for good? Yeah.
Maybe they thought that they knew what they were doing at that time was evil, but they thought that the end goal would have been better.
So the end justifies the means.
Yeah.
What I might be doing, I understand, is seen as evil, but the goal here is for greater Germany. So if it means exterminating, getting rid of, executing whoever it is, like before Hitler got into executing all the Jews, he was executing his own people. One of the, I don't know, was it in the notes? Did I talk about it yesterday? One of his leaders of the stormtroopers, you would think that would be like his right-hand guy. No, executed. 1936, maybe. Why would he do that? It doesn't matter who you are. If I even suspect that you might be going against me, here it is, the leader of the stormtroopers, right? That guy might have had the audacity to have his own mind and maybe have his own opinions. Nope, can't have it. You are in lockstep, literally, behind the Führer and Mussolini. He gains full dictatorship by 1927. So again, we talk about things in history like you cover a whole page of 100 years in a page of history. So from 1922, when the fascists become the leading party in Italy, and he's the leader, it isn't until 27 where he's able to convince everybody and get rid of all the other political parties where he is pronounces himself the dictator. So there is no other government entity kind of getting in the way constitutionally, right? Because these countries, before these guys came to power, had constitutions. They were set up to be, what kind of government do we have? Republics, right? Representative democracy. They were set up to be republics. In Germany, it was called the Weimar Republic. It was set up to be kind of like the United States. Democracy, the principles of democracy. It took a while to erode all of those things, to get rid of all of the institutions that had to do with democracy to gain their dictatorships. 1935. Here's the situation. Italy, Mussolini's got control of Italy. Italy's not really like, they're not in this as much as other countries as far as imperialism, having, staking claims, and particularly like Africa. So to show the world how serious Italy is about being a world power, Mussolini decides to go in and invade and take over Ethiopia in 1935. And among the other atrocities that happened there, I put this in parentheses because that's something you're aware of that happens with Hitler. So again, Hitler, learning from what Mussolini did when he went in there and brutally took over Ethiopia, you can imagine all the torture and slaughter that happened, and setting up concentration camps. That's not a new thing with Hitler. Yeah.
Where's Ethiopia?
Yeah. Well, all like the Dutch, the Germans, the British, the French had laid claim to much of Africa. So there was a quote unquote independent area. Hey, I'm taking that. Because he wants to get into the race for empire, to show that Italy should be reckoned with as a world power. Benito Mussolini. Super Bowl bingo. What do we got? Advertising for FanDuel now or something? Come on. Really go around in circles.
$100,000 in prizes. You could be rich.
Who was Benito Mussolini?
What type of government did he implement? During the 1920s, Benito Mussolini established a totalitarian regime in Italy. A powerful and persuasive speaker, Mussolini played on public dissatisfaction with high unemployment, inflation, and frequent labor strikes, as well as fear of communist influence.
Look, fear. You combine a person that has the ability, what's that CH word? You speak to people, and the charisma, the ability to speak and attract people to what you're saying, even if it's just your style of speaking. You combine that with the fear that was happening with, oh, how am I going to feed my family because of the economy? So easy through history to get people to form what's called mass formation. It's a psychological term that in societies, to just line up and follow that, even to the point of totalitarian rule, because they're going to provide you security.
In politics, Mussolini took advantage of the unstable situation by appealing to Italy's wounded national pride. He won the support of many Italians by promising to address the economic suffering and the threats posed by communism. In 1921, Mussolini established the Fascist Party. Fascism is a political ideology that stresses extreme nationalism and places the interest of the nation above that of the individual. Fascism.
By the way, minor point. Because they said it was established in 21, and our curriculum says it was established in 22, is either one of them necessarily wrong? So what probably happened is, through their research, they learned that the first meetings of the Fascist Party may have taken place in 1921, and then the other person that's putting together the information says the actual register as a political party happened in 1922. You guys are aware of stuff like that, right? We don't make big deals about tiny little differences and things that we read, especially the
Also
further back in
emphasizes
history
the
you go.
need for a strong leader with the power necessary to address and eliminate the nation's problems. In October of 1922, Mussolini led 30,000 of his followers, known as Black Shirts, in an event known as the March on Rome. When many of the police, military, and government officials refused to stop the movement, the Italian king appointed Mussolini to lead the government. Rather than using the title of prime minister, Mussolini referred to himself as Il Duce, meaning the leader. Mussolini was granted emergency powers that were to last for only 1 year, but in doing so, the Italian parliament unknowingly established a dictatorship that would last for the next 20 years. Unlike Stalin, who used harsh methods to maintain control over his people, Mussolini sought to win public support. Mussolini praised the Italian people and their past, stirring up emotions by adopting much of the imagery of the Roman Empire. Mussolini glorified the nation's workers and the middle class, while promising to restore Italy to its former position as a world power. Under fascist rule, Italy had a balanced budget, inflation was eliminated, and the railway system was modernized. However, much of the success stemmed from the fact that Mussolini silenced his opposition. Opposing political parties were disbanded, while the press, radio, and film were used to distribute a ceaseless flow of propaganda. Over time, the fascists extended their control to every aspect of Italian life. The school system was used to indoctrinate children into fascist ideology. Students wore black uniforms, and the concepts of discipline, duty, and obedience were emphasized. Mussolini also hoped to enhance Italy's role on the world stage and preached that it was natural for strong nations to conquer weak ones. Ethiopia, one of the few remaining independent nations in Africa, became his first target. Haile Selassie, the Emperor of Ethiopia, pleaded with the League of Nations for support as thousands of Italian soldiers prepared to invade in 1935. The League of Nations responded with a modest economic boycott of Italy and offered no military assistance as Selassie was forced to flee. Ethiopia was conquered and officially annexed by Mussolini in May 1936.
By the way, whose teachings might have led to someone thinking that it was perfectly natural, maybe even normal and acceptable to have the stronger dominate the weaker? Things don't happen in a vacuum. 2 generations before Mussolini did this, whose theories and whose theory became public knowledge? Stronger dominate the weaker, survival of the fittest. Yeah? Darwin. You had 2 things happening in the middle of the 1800s, Darwin and Karl Marx. And the 2 ideas and theories about life and government kind of become the dominant things that are being circulated in quote unquote educated or academic circles, if not fully implemented in primary education. But those were ideas that were being promulgated and then used by leaders to justify what was happening. Hitler and Mussolini and all of these guys. There's the ancient Roman guard holding the fasces, the bundle of sticks with the blade, symbolizing he's the authority. Benito Mussolini. Next, we go to Japan. As far as the United States goes, Japan is actually public enemy number one, right? Because it's Japan that initiated America entering World War II with their attack on Pearl Harbor. So while we remember Mussolini and Hitler and note their evil, it was Japan and this, yes, yes, sir.
I was gonna ask you first.
This guy, Hideki Tojo, leader of Japan, that is public enemy number one in the United States. He was prime minister and general of the Imperial Japanese Army. Having those titles makes him almost godlike. If you know, or if you don't know, let me tell you, the culture in Japan is very much based on loyalty, submission, dedication, honor to authority. Because they have the belief that their emperor, Tojo was an emperor, but he was, in some ways, as far as day-to-day life of Japan, more powerful than the emperor. The emperor was actually thought of as a god. So the way you're taught in Japan, and some of this still lingers, right? We're only a few generations away, that this idea of intense, strong loyalty and honor given to your leaders is very strongly emphasized in Japan. Whereas America, born of revolution, right? America born with this radical idea that we should oppose authority, right? I mean, that's how the whole thing was born, in opposing King George III. So we have this legacy of questioning, not honoring authority. Not so in Japan. So this guy, being prime minister, head of the government, and being the commanding general of the Imperial Japanese Army, you almost wouldn't even have to subjugate people with violence. They are naturally going to subjugate themselves to you. Does that make sense? The culture was such that, like they mentioned, and we'll get to Stalin after this, but the culture in Japan, not like Russia, Stalin had to use force and literally kill more than Hitler, we'll find out, of his own people to get them to obey. So he was born in 1884 and of course trained to fight and die for the emperor. Fight and die. In other words, the fight's not over until one of you's dead. And if it's him, so be it. That's honorable. Matter of fact, if the other guy's beating you, you know it would be more honorable than letting him capture you? Ending it yourself. Rather than give the enemy the glory of killing you. Kamikazes, everyone knows what those are, right? I mean, that was a honorable mission to be on. What other way to go in honor of your emperor God? Right? He ruled as a militaristic dictator. He's got government power and military power. Whew. Combination. I mean, in America, we haven't had to face this, but if there was ever a time when it seemed like you've got the president who's the chief of state, but he's also got another title, commander in chief. Well, we see our president as commander in chief, but we recognize there's this separation, there's this gap between his role as commander in chief. In other words, if America has to go to war, he has the final say whether we go or not, right? But in America, we have this idea that though he's commander in chief, we've got field generals that run the war. We would be in serious trouble if we ever got to a point where the president kind of had the leaders of the military like literally his right hand guys. Does that make sense? America would be on, it's just almost unfathomable in America to think that the president would have total control, even as commander in chief, total control of the military. So the people, for instance, 4 and 5 years ago, that, because of the way Trump's personality is, some on the extreme other side of the aisle would try to put in people's minds that, oh, Trump just wants to be a dictator. Oh, he's going to take over the military and we're going to have military dictatorship because, Trump, and you add to that, he's a racist. And if you could go, then if he's a racist, then we can add in there he's a white supremacist. And if we can say he's a white supremacist, then we can say he's a Nazi, right? How that all flows. And you get this fervor going. Nothing ever close to that happening. Of course, the other side of the aisle would be worried that if their president was to get control of the military, what would that mean? What would it mean? What would it mean if someone on the conservative side, like me, being videoed live right now to the world, was to talk negative about the policies of the current president administration, and then maybe there was a rule or a law passed that the Department of Homeland Security would hear what I was saying and put me on a watch list because I might be considered a domestic terrorist. What that sounds to you like might be far-fetched, but that's actually what happened in the last week. So what did I just do? I just put myself out there that I'm going to speak against, if I was to speak against the Biden administration, saying that what they were doing was either un-American. If I was to do that, that might put me on the federal government's watch list. Is that scary? Is that American? Is that a scary place to be, that someone would, that I might be considered a threat to the government because I'm questioning the government? What? Promoted Bushido. Bushido is the name given to this code of honor. If you're a Japanese citizen, and really, if you're a Japanese soldier, if you're in the Japanese army, this is the code you live by. Like I said, not only will you fight and die for the emperor, people of countries fight and die for their country all the time. But again, remember, in this case, it's not just fighting for your country, it's fighting for that man, the emperor. Why? Because he's a God. You have to fight and be willing to die for him. Again, even so far as to do nothing to dishonor him. And if it dishonors him that you would be captured and make him look weaker, then you're better off just doing it yourself, rather than, again, giving the enemy any honor and taking you out. The name of that code in Japanese is Bushido. Probably a test question, right? Like Italy, Japan, in world history, China has been, for the most part, until now, China was very secluded, recluse. The Great Wall of China, not just a physical building of a wall, but a symbolic showing us that China was just like kept to themselves. They came late to the party when it came to international trade. They wanted to keep their society pure, right? Japan comes even later than China. Japan, because of geography, being that island out in the sea, when Europeans moved to the east, Japan was even harder to break through that seclusion. Japan was more isolated even than China. So they're coming really late to the party when it comes to international trade, and there's that I word again, imperialism, where they want to extend beyond Japan and have control of other lands. So what they did, like when Mussolini went into Italy, Japan decides that they're going to take over an area in China known as Manchuria. So in 1931, they send their military in there and take that over. Of course, China isn't just going to sit there and say, oh no. So China gears up to fight, and they end up in a full-fledged war, which we'll get to in a second. Tojo is a militaristic dictator who is extremely loyal to his emperor, and Japan should be favored above all.
Extra students, we just have a quick announcement. Leo Club is canceled for today, so please report to your regular activity period.
So Hirohito wants Japan to rise up among the nations to be one of the leaders, and this is the beginning of the imperialism. But he also did two other things. He traveled to Europe, and as he went around, he really admired the German military. Of course, the Germans, very militaristic, very dedicated to trying to make Germany the premier power in Europe. So when he saw the German military and their dedication to excellence and their dedication to Germany, he thought that was awesome. When he came to America and he saw our military and he saw our culture, he thought, what a bunch of weak. What, America? They are weak. They're portrayed as the great one of these great powers of the world. He goes and looks at our military and says, they are weak. Why would he think that? Why would he think that? And many like present day. Do you think Vladimir Putin thinks American military is strong as his or weaker? Forget the weaponry, forget the sophistication and the technology of our weapons. Does he think that the enlisted man in the United States Army is as strong as the Russian soldier? What do you think? Why not? Why would Tojo look at the American military and think, this is just blatant weakness? And 70 years later, 80 years later, an enemy like Putin or President Xi in China as the leader of the Communist Party, they look at the American soldier today and think weakness. We don't think that. We think we got the strongest fighting force in the world. And we don't necessarily think that just because of our technology. Why do you think the other places think that of us? Come on, participate. Going back to the 1930s, why would Hirohito's the emperor. Why would Tojo visit the United States, look at the way we do things militarily and think, you kidding? This great United States? We'll bury them. You're a little island of Japan. Why would he think that? Why would present-day Putin think? I mean, he's worried about the nuclear capability, but if there was ever a ground war, you think he thinks we'd be a match for them? Come on, somebody. Doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong answer. Yeah.
They're more strict.
What do you mean?
I don't know. They just have more like rules about military stuff.
Okay, keep going.
I don't
So
know.
they're more strict, more rules about their military. Good, Derek. Thank you. They're more strict about their military rules. In other words, they're more dedicated, more focused on their military mission. 80 years ago, Tojo looked at the American military and thought they were weak. We weren't weak. The American military is a product of American culture, right? 2020, 21st century, you're a commander of a nation like Russia, or even Japan today, or thankfully Germany's not very militaristic today, but one of those cultures where this is primary. Your loyalty and dedication to the mission of the nation is first and foremost. If you look at the American military in the 21st century, you might not know this, but are we distracted by a whole lot of other things other than the primary mission of developing a military that is going to be able to defend America and defeat the enemy at all costs? Do you think the other countries look at our military like that? They do? They don't. What's going on in our military in the 21st century? We're worried about things that have nothing to do with blowing people up and blowing things up and killing people. Wow, that sounded harsh. What's the military's job? What's the military's job? We've developed a culture where we think the military's job is to go in and help other people. Or worse, our military seems more concerned with teaching things like critical race theory. We've got soldiers sitting in classrooms trying to be indoctrinated and trained to think because they're white that they have some kind of privilege and they got to check their privilege. That's the things the other countries laugh at us. That we're spending time worrying about those things when if it ever came time to war, of course we're weak. What are we doing? Does that make sense? 80 years ago, they thought that of American culture as being soft. Imagine what they think of us now. It's, excuse the phrase, but praise the Lord, we got so much technology that we'd be able to overcome our quote unquote weakness and softness compared to those other countries. All right, we'll pick up with the Washington Naval Treaty next time. Does anybody remember that Washington Naval Treaty? Anyway, Japan decides to unilaterally cancel. Say, you know what? We're not following that anymore.